Alright, what is up everybody? My name is Blue Drake. I am part of the development team for Operation Harsh Doorstop. Today, we are going to be doing another playtest which you can join. So feel free to support us on Patreon if you want to get a Steam key to the playtest. The single-player version of the game is going to be launching on March 30th, but you can still get a Steam key on Patreon for the multiplayer playtest both before and after that date through Patreon. And if you wait around on this stream, we are going to be dropping keys for the game. And you will also be able to get a multiplayer Steam key by chilling out and waiting for a key drop. I don't think the stream has doubled audio, so just double check. Sometimes I've noticed with YouTube, if you have it multiple and open, if you have it open in multiple places, sometimes it'll play the audio twice. But that should be entirely fixable. Yeah, I can lower the in-game audio just a tad. There we go. Yeah, hopefully. Today, we're actually going to be doing a lot more than just playtesting. We're also going to be talking with... I mean, I guess I can say that he's our lead AI developer. I mean, right? Our only AI developer right now, correct? I mean, unless you count Donkey. But I think it's primarily you right now, right? Delay? Yeah? Alright, cool. And actually, Delay, tell me a little bit about your history, because I've talked before about, because Delay has actually just recently gone full-time with us, which is great, and hopefully if we continue growing the Patreon and everything, we can continue growing the team. But Delay, give me a little bit of background on yourself. Where do you come from? What have you worked on? What previous studios did you work for, etc.? Do your thing. Talk about yourself. I know you love doing that. That's a joke. You don't. You don't love talking at all. You're very reserved. So this is probably a nightmare for you. But it's a dream for everybody else because we love your work.
Well, it's not a nightmare. But
I know. I'm joking.
Much on the talking, but hi everybody. I'm from Serbia, and I've been working in the industry for like 10 years now, I guess. I worked at Ubisoft for some time. I worked on the Ghost Recon Wildlands. I also worked on the game called Scorn that should be out October, I think.
You worked on Scorn?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. You actually worked on
Really?
Scorn? No, you must have. I know you've told me because obviously we knew that you worked at Ghost Recon Wildlands, and that's been a big sell. And obviously, whenever I talk to people, I'm like, "Yo, he worked for Wildlands." Either you've never told me, but I can't imagine you haven't, or I just completely forgot that you worked on Scorn.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I think that the Scorn is one of the 3 games that I list that I worked on, like Scorn, Wildlands, and I don't know what's the third one, to be honest.
What is did you work on the AI for Scorn, or did you?
Yeah.
Really? That's amazing. That's super cool.
And
Man, here I am being all excited about working with you now. That's awesome. But yeah.
What we're doing for OHD, I worked similar things for Scorn, but it's a very different game, so obviously I couldn't push the AI as much.
Yeah, I don't think your AI aren't like walking in like V formations and using suppressive fire. They're like vomiting on each other and stuff. Like, yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even realize that. See, this is why we do these things. So we actually, when did we bring you on now? How long have you been? You've been working part-time for us for it's been over a year. Has it been
a year and a half?
Yeah,
and some more, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And
it feels like
it does feel like it's been. I think it's just like the intensity of the situation. Like, because normally, like there's so much at stake, and it's like you don't know how things are gonna go, so it's like it just feels you grow older faster. So Delay has done the vast majority of the work on our AI so far, and we do read all of the feedback. I don't know how. I mean, you read at least some of it. Yeah. We read all of the comments and stuff. So I know that there is some criticism of the AI in its current form. Although I do have to clarify, I think all of this is very much intentional. Because right now, our objective wasn't to make, like... obviously, developing AI, it takes a lot of time. And with Wildlands, you were working with, like, an entire team. Like, they have a massive team, right? Like,
Yeah,
would you say... Would you say, like, thousands of people? Thousands of people, easily.
Well, maybe not thousands, but 1,000 for sure. Like,
yeah. Right.
Like maybe 2,000 people at most. Like,
yeah.
It's a couple of studios. Like, I was working in Romania, one of the Romanian studios, and they had, like, I don't know, a few thousand people, like, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
so...
the whole floor was just...
multiple studios across multiple countries, across multiple, like with thousand, at least over 1,000 people, but possibly more than that.
I mean, like 1,000 developers and like.
And we have how many? I mean, those are like 1,000 full-time people. We have how many developers do you think we have? I guess we'll count part-timers. So part-timers, 15. 10?
Yeah, like 1,000 full-time people and 1,000 half-time people, something like that.
Yeah. All right, hold up. Let me drop a key before people, just so people know that I got the goods. Here we go. Here comes the goods, my friends. External keys. Hold up. I have to pull these off of. Boom. There is a key. So there's a key in chat. Redeem it. Do your thing. I'll be semi-regularly dropping keys throughout this entire process. So Delay, he started working with us probably almost a couple years ago now. And keep in mind, the types of teams that work on artificial intelligence for Wildlands are like massive. They have way bigger budgets. They have way bigger teams. And this is just, I mean, again, compared to other studios that are like fully funded and have massive teams, like we're very small. So we really had to strategize. It's like, okay, if this is going to be a long-term endeavor, and hopefully, you know, we can offset the fact that we may not have a massive team, but we can build things with the long term in mind. So it might take us longer to get some things done, but if we build them correctly, we can build them in a way where, you know, at the end of that long term, hopefully it could be as good as features and AI in completely different games like Wildlands and stuff like that. Obviously Wildlands, I mean, in a year they could develop something, you know, absolutely insane. But, you know, let's say it takes us 3 years, 4 years, 5 years even possibly. You know, we can take that extra time. But at the end of the day, if we get this done once, if we get really good, solid AI completed one time, it's out there. It's done. It's available for everybody. That's the whole vision of this. It's like, yes, Operation Harsh Doorstop, it's going to take longer. It's going to be harder. But the payoff if we do this is just going to be immense. So the current version of the AI, I would say, are fairly intentionally rather simplistic. I mean, wouldn't you say? Like, I mean, not to say, yeah. So
a lot of it is just basic, bare bones functionality.
Yeah. The objective that we have is to build out. Hold up, let me kill some of these AI so I can take this flag. The objective is to kind of build the AI out in layers. So obviously, you know, at the very beginning, you're not going to have AI that are like super intelligent and can utilize flanking maneuvers and all that stuff. Like before you can build AI that really have like a meta understanding of the battlefield or can perform like complex tasks, you got to build AI that have at least like a basic library of behavior that is functional. And I think one of the first things that we had to do that we were really proud of was the dynamic pathfinding system. So right now, you know, even just having the AI have the ability to move from one point to another autonomously without like having a path, and that was really important. And I think, actually, Delay, how much of that, because the pathfinding system, I think Jordan, Donkey, he had a lot to do with that. How much was that? Yeah, I think he did a lot of the pathfinding, and then you built some of the behavior on top of that. Remind me how.
Well, I think that my initial setup used just standard Unreal Engine like navigation mesh and pathfinding.
Yeah.
But then he fixed it to have like, you know, like live
Yeah, the live dynamic
next
stuff.
generation and all that. I'm
Right.
not really sure how how much did he go into details with that. Like I trust him, so
Yeah,
he
yeah.
did a
No, of
great job
course.
at that. So
We
yeah,
all do.
yeah,
You always trust the lead engineer.
yeah.
Because you have to. Like,
There's no other
there's no
choice.
other choice. What are we gonna do? So yeah. And now that we've kind of finally built this really nice basic in fact, let me go ahead and let me kind of back up here. I'm gonna enable the dev console
They got me suppressed.
so I can actually kind of give an overview, because I think how many players do we have?
Keep 'em
Yeah,
away from me, fuck's sake.
we still have a number of AI on the map, even though we've got a lot of players here.
Mm.
So you'll actually
Seems like
see, yeah, you'll see the AI. They'll move from point A to point B, and the first iteration of the AI, they would literally just zerg rush to the point. And again, that was us building out the layers of functionality, starting simple and then slowly adding more complexity. And one of the things that you and I talked about was incorporating like the whole Boyd's dynamic, where because the first iteration of the AI, they all walk in like that conga line, right? Because they would
Yeah.
create. They would figure out the path, even though it was dynamic pathfinding, but then they would all walk on a single line, just literally single file to an
Yeah.
objective. And then you and I talked, and we started doing research into like the Boyd's mechanic and the Boyd's system, and we started looking at how. God, hold up, I'm gonna have to. I'm really frustrated that when you die, it like disables the admin cam. I would really love to just be dead and then be able to use admin cam anyways, but I guess that's whatever. Anyways, and I think what we wanted to do, I guess the way I could sum this up is like, how do you make bots feel human, but using the simplest methods to make them feel human as possible, right?
Yeah.
Because and I think that's kind of the trick, and I think as you guys watch the AI development, you'll notice it's like there are some things that you can implement, like the Boyd's mechanics, because I mean, I don't know, Delay, if you'd want to expound on this, but I feel like the concept of Boyd's it's pretty simple, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, maintain this dispersion from somebody else, randomly deviate from your path by this amount and stuff like that. And it's such a simple concept, but ironically, even though it's a relatively simple concept, it is the result, especially when you look into some of like the two-dimensional Boyd's demos and the showcases and the papers that are done on it, it looks surprisingly organic. Like, it looks surprisingly organic, to the point where it's kind of strange how there aren't more games that incorporate that kind of mentality with the AI.
A lot of things in the AI have this notion to them that it is very simple to make it, but to fine tune it to actually feel good and work with all the other systems, that takes a lot of time. I mean, our Boyd system wasn't as nice in the beginning. It took us some time to tweak it.
Yeah,
and I mean, it still needs a lot of work. We are aware of that.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But I think that one of our goals was to make AI fun to play against. And like, again, we all know that it's very simple, but I think that they are kind of fun to play, even though they are simple.
Yeah. I think there's also a difference between fun to play against and effective. Because some people will complain and they'll be like, hey, like, why are the AI so bad? And it's like, what do you mean? I think they feel pretty human. And they're like, oh, but they just can't hit their targets. And it's like, we can make them hit their targets. Like, that's not. Do you want us to do that? Because then as soon as like finding that that middle ground is very difficult, because then everybody's like, oh, well, they're all aim bots, right? And like trying to find that middle ground of like the difficulty of the AI is very difficult. All right, hold on one second. So next we'll talk about, hold up, let me give another key so everybody stops freaking out. And remember, if you actually want a key and you happen to have $5, you can go and support us on Patreon, and you can support the project, support our wonderful AI developer like Delay here. and go back us. But for the rest of you, here is another key. And I'm going to do that thing where I'm only going to post part of the key. All right, there we go. Hold on, make sure this is removed. All right, so there's the key that I just posted, and I didn't put the last letter. The last letter is 2 plus 2 plus 2. There you go. That's it. You figure it out. You plug that in. You've got it. You've got it. All right, cool. So anyway, so now that we've kind of given an overview, again, I mean, we could, I think every single element of the AI, obviously we've worked on this for the past almost 2 years, so we could probably talk forever about every single little thing. Like, even just talking about the Boyd's mechanics, we could probably sit here and talk about for eternity. But let's kind of talk about the plans for, like, the future and, like, stuff that we're hoping to implement next over time with the AI, expounding upon their functionality, etc. I don't know if you have, do you have any, like, things that you want to talk about before we even go into that? Because I can...
Not really, man.
Yeah, I mean, I could. There's like, I could. There's just so. I mean, that's the point, right? It's like the AI. It's infinite. There's infinite possibilities. Like there's a.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem we sometimes have is we have to sit down and it's like, okay, we've got limited time, we've got limited money. What do we do next? You know, of like the billion things we could. We could give them, like, what's going to be the most important thing to do next?
Yeah, well that was in a lot of ways the limiting factor so far, because we had, like you said, limited time, limited budget, and it was like we had to cherry pick most important elements.
Yeah.
To develop them, and hopefully now we can.
Right.
Work in,
that's true. I think the cool thing about where all of the AI are now is a lot of the basic critical functionality is now in. So that is a big element of this. Hold up. Where's my chat moderators? I need Lieutenant Dan or somebody. Begging for keys ain't gonna get you keys any faster, my friends. Maybe it will. Actually, I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. How do I time people out? You'd think I was a All right, let's chill out on the spam. Let's chill it out on the spam, or we're gonna have to. Oh nope, see. All right, I need a mod. I need a mod in chat, bro. All right, whatever. That's fine. So one of the coolest things I think about where the AI are now is all of the critical features, all of the stuff that we talked. You know, when we originally met and brought you on, and we were excited about this whole concept. I think we had put together this roadmap of all of the critical things that the AI would need to have to even be like functional at all, to be fun to play against at all. Because having a bunch of AI conga lining to the flag, that's not even playable. It's not fun. Like it works, but it's not fun. And we had to really sit down 2 years ago and to say, okay, what are all the things that we need to implement to even get the AI to a starting point where we can start thinking about the fun stuff and start making them good. And the cool place about where we are now is I would say almost all of those things that they needed to have to be fun to play against are in, or are more or less in, save for maybe a couple things, but even those things are functional. You would say that, right?
Yeah, there's always things to improve and things to add, but yeah, I think that we have a solid foundation to build on.
Yeah.
And I think that we've pretty much achieved everything that we hoped on initially. Like you said, to have a basic functioning AI system. I think we have pretty much all from that list. Maybe something extra.
I think the original list that we created, we've done almost all of the things that we needed to. Hold on, let me see. I need to get Chach in here. I need to get Chach in here to help moderate this or something. Oh well, whatever. All right, I'll just let you guys beg for keys for now until a mod comes in. But yeah, so the next things that I think we're going to be doing Again, that was one of the things that you and I were going to meet about today, which I guess in some ways we can kind of go over in this live stream if we want. But we'll probably, I mean, we also have our developer meeting at 4 p.m. Eastern, and that's usually when we'll talk about everything in depth. But the stuff that we were talking about doing right now, I have that list. Do I still have that list? Where's it? You have the list. Did I pin it? Because there's all the... Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. So here's the list. We've got formations. So having the AI utilize formations, that is a possibility. We have one of the big things I think right now is having more complex usage of equipment. So right now the AI, they just use their primary weapon, and as an interim solution, a temporary solution, we've currently set it so the AI actually have infinite ammo. But at some point, we would love to have it so the AI could actually rearm themselves, so they could actually heal one another, or, you know, utilize grenade launchers, switch back and forth between their rocket launcher, which is also, that's kind of more of a complex thing than I think people realize. Like, when do they use the rocket launcher, right? Like, when do they decide, when do you have an AI use a grenade? You know, right?
Like, to describe the context of a battle to AI is not as easy as it seems. Like for humans, it's you just use a grenade, but it's not it's doable, but not as easy as it seems.
Right, and so that's going to be a big conversation that we're going to have here soon. You know, like, are we going to have it so the AI like utilize grenades and stuff like that every couple of seconds? Is it going to be like a situational like where, you know, they only use it if there's like a big concentration of like bad guys, or, you know? So let's see. Let me read through the rest of our list. What are other things? I think the next thing we decided on, we'll have to revisit this at the meeting, but the next thing that we really want to focus on is the visibility systems. So right now, smoke grenades are just not effective against AI. Granted, that is one of the reasons we've made it so all of the AI are stormtroopers and can't hit the broadside of a barn, because it kind of balances out. So it's like, even if the AI can see you through smoke, it's not going to be that effective because they're not particularly good at shooting. But I think those are kind of like the short-term stuff. I think long-term, other things that we've talked about, as I also talked about in the AI video and stuff like that, are having different types of like hierarchies for, you know, like command. So for instance, the officers and the squad systems, where you potentially have it so the AI actually follow a squad leader, possibly even accept orders from an AI squad leader, or maybe even a player squad leader. Stuff like that. That's all of the things that I can think of right now that I have on this list. I don't know if you want to...
Those are the main points, definitely.
Yeah. I don't know if you have any thoughts on anyone specifically.
Well, like, I would just maybe like to give a little bit more detail for people here that we are first going to work on them following orders only from AI squad leaders, and then we will add like player given commands to AI. Like, just don't expect, you know, ordering AI in the next month or so.
Yeah, I think right now, so we're probably going to do it like this. So the first thing is going to be you know, AI visibility, and then the next thing is going to be you know, AI following squad leaders. And then I think the cool thing about this is, as we implement the functionality for the AI, it'll kind of affect things across the board. So for instance, if we implement the ability for AI to follow squad leaders, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to care whether that squad leader is a player or a bot. So that means if there's a player that is a squad leader and there's a bunch of AI in that squad, the AI will actually just follow that player around, which in a way is kind of the first version of like commanding units, I would say.
And it's pretty much what we've done so far. We have a simple like a primitive bare bone version, and then we see what works, what doesn't, and then we improve and make it more and more complex.
Right,
And
right, right.
another thing that will kind of like be a side effect of it is that as they're when they start to follow the squad leader, they will automatically group together, so they won't attack a flag one at a time and just get killed, but they will attack a flag as a group and be more effective that way. So it's like,
Yeah,
we achieve two things.
yeah. That's so. I want to go into that more. So I guess at this point we've kind of given an overview of all of the AI, and again, there's a million things that we can talk about. And we're also going to have a conversation at 4 with the rest of the development team, and we're going to lay out the next roadmap of what we're going to be developing. But some of these features, not to say that we're going to be working on these next, because we do have a bunch of other things to work on. Some of these features I think are really, really interesting to talk about. Like that, if we have a morale system, how do we implement that morale system? Like if we have it so there's a system, like should we have it so when the officer in a squad gets killed, should we have it so the rest of the AI retreat? Should we have a system where it's like the AI like retreat even when most of the squad has been killed? Like, how much self-preservation should we give them?
Yeah, well, I think that's the key there, because ideally they would make that decision based on other circumstances. For example, how many squad members are left. If only the squad leader is killed, then maybe they will just hold the position until their squad leader joins, or like respawns and joins them again. But if it's only a couple of them, then they may scatter, or if they're under suppression fire, they will try to preserve their lives more. But if they're in a kind of a safe situation, then they will just continue moving on. So
yeah,
like,
I
there's
think
a lot of room to.
I think the other thing we talked about as well, and we might have to, is the fact that different types of AI might also react differently. So obviously, like a civilian is going to be way more likely to retreat, than like a trained, militant of some kind or something. Yeah. So I think that's another thing. What we're currently working on is, how do we create an AI system that is flexible and still modular enough in order to cover all of these different bases and not get too pigeonholed into just a single type of behavior. So that way, but we also don't want to make it too complex either, because we don't want to create AI that's so modular and so customizable that implementing a new AI unit is just like an absolute chore either. I think we have to find that middle ground where it's like they're modular enough, where they're flexible, but it's not so overly complex and so overly modular that, for the people that are working in the SDK, they want to, jump off a bridge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do have this thing in the back of my mind all the time. Like, how are people using the SDK, making mods? How are they going to use this? Like, they can expose every single thing and make them, just overloaded with possibilities. And like you said, be like, what the hell is this? They just quit. So like, that is an important aspect too. And also like, developing it slowly and gradually, I think it helps that, so that people
so they have time to play with it and give feedback, so we can more finely tune it. One guy randomly, I'll actually link this in general chat as well. I linked it in the live stream chat. But here, delay. I don't know if you've seen this guy, but here's one guy. His name is Bofides. I don't know how to say, but he's been playing around with the SDK a lot. And right now, I think he's working on like destructible doors and stuff like that. I don't know. It's pretty cool. But he's also played around with some of the AI, and it's really cool watching him work. But yeah, I think for everybody that's watching, that's also a big aspect. Getting into the SDK, playing around with stuff, and then giving us feedback on, what do you think works? What do you think doesn't work? Not just from like a gameplay standpoint, but also from a technical standpoint, from like a back-end SDK standpoint. That's really valuable feedback. So let's go let's dig a little bit deeper into, I think, actually, let's just throw a Hail Mary. Let's let's just talk about stupid long-term stuff. I don't even know if you've thought about this yet, because one big hurdle that we will have to get over. I've talked with Donkey about this. We're not going to have to worry about this probably for a while because we have to implement the base feature first. Is AI and vehicles. Have you thought about this at all? Yeah, I'm sure you have. You know, it's funny. I talked to Donkey. I could be misremembering. I probably am. I remember him saying that the vehicle AI pathfinding might actually be easier than the I could be lying though. Maybe he did not say that. What is your take on it, Delay? What do you?
I don't have personal experience like making AI for vehicles. Like I've looked around, I've watched a lot of videos, a lot of tutorials, a lot of people talking about it, but I didn't do it myself, so I can only speculate.
Right.
But pathfinding might be easy, I guess. Like we can just maybe follow splines for.
Yeah, that's
roads.
what I was thinking because you've
Yeah.
already got all these splines and everything.
Yeah, but I'm not really sure. Like it might be very simple. It might be a challenge to make them drive because moving on foot is not the same as driving. Like there's more limitations. You know, like turning around in a vehicle is not the same as turning around on foot and things
Right.
like that.
Right.
You know, like, real humans have a problem. Like
Right.
driving in
Right.
reverse.
Right. I mean, Tesla isn't like a multi-billion-dollar company based off the self-driving stuff because that is easy to do. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's
Exactly.
like the big thing. It is kind of funny how I think some people forget how complicated game development can be, right? Because people
Yes.
think about it and they're like, oh, well, you know, like making AI for vehicles, that should be easy. But then when you think about it, it's like, man, there's multi-billion-dollar companies that develop AI specifically for like self-driving vehicles, and they haven't figured it out for like real-life cars. What makes you think that like training an AI to drive in a digital environment is really that different? So it's like we're sitting here trying to solve, and I think, you know, there's actually, because it's interesting to bring this up as well because you know, we have one of the things that our company does is we'll sometimes do contract work for other studios, sometimes studios that aren't even working on game related stuff. They are working on, you know, real world application things. And I think a lot of people, when I tell them about some of the other contracts that we do, they're like, well, why would you guys be a good fit for that? Like, you guys are just game developers. And I'm like, why do you think game development and like normal software development is all that different? Like, there's a lot of real world stuff you got to figure out for games. Yeah. So
I guess, you know, when you said that people don't really understand how difficult it can be, like, a lot of people dabble in game development, so they, you know, open Unreal, make a project, and test things out.
Yeah.
And there is so much of a difference between making a prototype project and just making the whole project about AI vehicles, for example, or any specific thing, and then making that work with the entire system of, you know,
the entire game. Yeah,
and also keeping it performant so that you can have 100 AI units running smoothly,
Right.
and everything else on top of that. You know, there's a big gap between, you know, a simple prototype and actually being, you know,
yeah. It's
shippable.
like the difference between, like, I don't know. It's like a Rubik's Cube. It's a Rubik's Cube, like, honestly.
Yeah,
Like, I think because there's just so many simultaneous things that you have to keep in mind. It's just, yeah, it's absolutely insane.
I guess it's a lot like, you know, a lot of math professors will like show you a simple equation in class, and then when you get the exam, it's like 3 times harder. Like, what
Right,
the hell is this?
right. Exactly. But I think, I honestly think, in my opinion, that is also kind of the allure of game development for the company as well, because it is really cool because, like, some of these features you'll start working on, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, we're off, like, doing research and, like, putting work into, like, you know, I don't know, like how birds flock together in real life. And it's like, how did we get onto this topic? But it actually impacts the game. Like, sitting here trying to figure out how this works. Like, it is very, it's interesting.
I read so many research papers just to figure out some simple thing, you know, just to make it work, or solve a math equation, you know, like we'll go down this rabbit hole
Yeah.
a lot of times. But
Rabbit hole, that's a good word. Yeah. That is what
we
it
like-
becomes.
Yeah, and it's just one after another.
Yeah, I know.
Get one and just jump right into the next.
Yeah, some of the stuff that Donkey does, you know, like he'll sit there and you'll ask, we'll be like, well, we should implement this feature, and in your mind, you're like, how complicated could that be, right? You know, and then you come back and Donkey's like got research on like quantum equations or some crazy shit pulled up, and you're like, is it really like that complicated? And he's like, well, if you think about it, if you wanted to do this, you're gonna have to learn how like quantum physics works. And it's like, what the shit?
And then he is a perfectionist. Like he.
I know, right?
Perfectly every time.
It's like we
so,
just
yeah.
wanted to put a join button on the server browser. Like I didn't think that it was gonna be like this, dude. That's funny, but yeah. So here soon with the AI. I think again, this is constantly changing. I want to make sure everybody keeps this in mind as well. I think our plan sometimes constantly changes based on new information. So sometimes we'll be like, all right, maybe we should do this for the AI, but then 2 weeks will go by and we'll play test the game and we're like, nah, you know what? I don't think that would actually work as well as like doing this. So, you know, keep in mind, everything we say here is subject to change. We're not committing to any features. We're not saying anything is going to be done the way that it's going to be done. And then, you know, in some cases, you know, some people, I think some people don't realize sometimes there's a feature that you don't really implement. It just naturally occurs from us developing something else that doesn't seem like it's related at all. You know, so for instance, like I think when we put in the dynamic pathfinding and the ability for AI to move wherever they want, that solved so many problems at the time, and I think it's going to continue to solve even more problems as time goes on.
Yeah.
Because now, you know, because some people are like, well, you know, how are you going to implement the ability for them to like, you know, build fobs and like walk around player constructed, you know, obstacles? And it's like, dude, we actually already have that. You know, like we already have that in the game. Like it's already completed. So I think there's also an element of us trying to figure out how we can kill not just 2 birds with 1 stone, but maybe 3, 4, 7, 20 birds with a single stone. You know, like let's implement the simplest feature possible that solves as many player or gameplay problems as we possibly can. And there's an art to that as well. So so let's talk about your idea or your thoughts. Because, again, we're going to have to go a little bit deeper probably in another conversation, but I think that conversation would be boring for us to have. Because I do want to talk about how we're probably going to create, like, an AI profile system. I do think we're going to have to do that at some point where we're going to have basically, like, different behaviors for different types of AI. So it's like, you know, civilians behave differently from, you know, soldiers, or maybe different types of soldiers. You know, like you've got militants versus, you know, you're not going to have a bunch of insurgents out there, you know, using using like advanced, you know, tactics and stuff, but they're also not going to run away screaming like a civilian. And you know, who knows, we also want to make it so with mod support as well, it's flexible. But let's not go into the details of that. Let's just talk about the basics. Let's talk about just how man, how best to go about this. I think I would probably say for the next iteration of the AI, we're probably going to create like a single AI. Even if we do create this profile system and we have all of these different AI types, we're probably going to start by developing a single AI behavior profile, which controls, you know, when they retreat, how they retreat, why they retreat. So let's talk about the specifics of that. How are we going to update our existing AI with additional features, you know, retreating, formations, when do they use formations, when do they retreat, how do they behave under fire? Do you have anything that you want to talk about with that? I know you've thought about this.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we can geek out on this and just talk for hours, and I guess people would get bored. But I think a big part of that is the thing I've already mentioned, is that one thing will affect another. And one of the first things that we're going to work on now is AI behaving like a squad.
Right.
firstly just following a squad leader.
Yep.
But that will affect other things, because if they are following their squad leader, then we can make that squad leader a bit smarter, and then he can like analyze the battlefield, let's call it like that, a
Yeah.
bit more. Because right now they pretty much don't have a lot of awareness about what's going on, like
Yeah.
how many enemies are there, how many of friendlies, like they're just
They run at
like,
the objective until they get shot at, and then when they get shot at, they go, "Oh shit!" and they hit the dirt, and that's it. That's all they do. Yeah.
oh, like better do this again.
Yeah, yeah, and then they die, and then they just charge right back. That would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
interesting. I wonder if we should ever implement the ability for them to like have intelligence of previous lives. I wonder if that would matter. Like if they bum
Well,
rush an objective too
I
many
think
times.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to have, but like we are far away from that. But
I know.
I mean, it's
I think just as a heads up, I think we've talked about all of the important stuff, so we kind of are in fun discussion
yeah.
territory at this point. So long-term stuff, if you want to talk about it, feel free.
Yeah,
Just
like-
conceptuals.
but like that kind of thing, like working memory, where when they will remember what happened and they will see like, oh, like I was thinking about making like heat maps of the level.
Yeah.
So they will kind of like know, oh, there's a lot of combat here, and if I died a bunch of times,
Right.
then I'm gonna avoid the combat zone. But if I made a lot of kills and I didn't die, then we can simulate like the adrenaline and
Yeah.
just getting courageous, and then they will go into the combat zone just because they were lucky.
You know
Things
what
like
could be
that.
cool? I think that we could also possibly do that in a way that isn't immersion breaking. So like we could potentially make it so the heat map zone is actually based on whether the officer can like report back. Like we could have a system
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, the heat map is only changed when the AI contact one another through communications, like radio or something like that, and then they can inform the rest of the forces that like there's danger there. But if they get killed before, so there's also ways that we could probably impact like a danger heat map in a way that isn't like God mode.
Yeah. I mean, like, we will see as we develop these things, like whenever we get to them.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
like, there's a lot of ways like we can do that, and I really like that organic behavior. Like, a lot of our AI right now, there's not a lot of God mode elements here. Like,
Yeah.
they will attack you only if they see you. Like they
Yeah.
can cheat, but they're not cheating actually. Like if they see you, they will shoot at you. There's a lot to improve, obviously, but like I don't like that cheat element with AI
Right.
when they were like abused.
That is
Part-
actually a big thing that I think people need to understand as well. A big difference between our AI and probably AI through different games is the AI are actually players. Like they are actually utilizing, because I think with other games they'll actually have like a different controller for the AI versus for the players. But with us, they actually all utilize the exact same thing. I think Call of Duty does this a lot. So like if you play a Call of Duty campaign, like the way the AI work, like all of their animations, all of their functionality, it's pretty fundamentally different from how the players work. Versus with this, the AI are very truly bots, where it's like it is the player controller. Like it is basically the equivalent as if like a computer had an Xbox controller in its hands.
Yeah.
And
They-
And I
mean,
think
they literally use the exact same blueprint for the character.
Yes.
Whether it's a human player or a AI thing.
Yeah.
Like, they have a different controller, like you said. Like their controllers are different, but the character is exactly the same. Like there's
Right.
the exactly same blueprint. We just have one character blueprint that we use. So,
Right. I think long term as well, that's going to be even more powerful because it means that no matter what, single player, multiplayer, etc., you can it not only is it going to support single player, like so the AI, you can have AI in single player, you can have AI in multiplayer, but even beyond that, I don't know if this would ever be a thing, but imagine if somebody were to make like an RTS game mode for Operation Harsh Doorstop, you could probably do that and then instantly like take control of another AI and like switch from AI to AI, and that would be a pretty simple thing to do because like they're the exact same. Like you're literally just swapping out the brain. Instead of having to like completely redo everything. So I think if we could get the AI feeling really, really good in this game, I think long term that's going to be like a super powerful thing. So
like the thing you mentioned a couple of days ago, that if you could just get into the AI and watch them play, like
right, that could be cool. Like having a spectator mode where you could, see through the AI. Yeah, that would be sick. So let's get into the minute. I think actually one thing, we will have to find this at some point. I think one thing that we're probably going to need here soon, not that we don't already have a bunch, but we'll have to have a couple more. I think we're going to really need like military advisors at some point, especially when it comes to like strategies. Like how to incorporate. I don't know. Have you thought about that at all? Like, because I feel like at some point we're just gonna have to like start hitting the books when it comes to like military doctrine or something.
Yeah. We talked about that a lot, to have them like actually behave like a professional.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of those rabbit holes where we're gonna we're gonna be sitting here doing like reading Sun Tzu's Art of War and stuff, and it's like, how do you fucking implement there?
Chinese.
I know. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna be just in some crazy tangential.
But, I mean, that's why we're here, because we love doing this. So.
I know. So yeah, I would say, so a couple of things to think about. So, and also to compare and contrast this to other games as well. I think Arma, even though I love Arma, Arma's great, but I think Arma, and I've talked about this with Donkey as well, Arma has AI that are pretty flexible, but they function in such a rigid way. I think sometimes it's immersion breaking. Like there's definitely a big difference between how the AI behave and how players behave in Arma. Like for instance, you'll have situations where you run into like an AI squad in Arma and they're all in like a perfect V formation, right? Even though they're under fire, and it's like they're still maintaining this perfect V formation even under fire, and it's like, would real players actually maintain like a formation even if they're, like getting shot at and stuff like that? And I think
real players don't have a bird's eye view of
right, exactly. Like how would they even know? Like how would they even know where everybody else is? And I think that's going to be interesting. I think here soon what we'll probably be doing is we'll probably be implementing systems where you'll actually have the AI function as a group, but the group will change depending on external stimuli. So we'll have it so we'll probably have a difference between like rigidity and a lack of rigidity depending on the situation. So maybe when there's no fire, everybody's calm, they're all going to be walking in like a perfect line or like a perfect V formation or something like that. But as soon as they start taking fire, and again, utilizing the Boyd's system, like the Boyd's mentality, I think is going to be really great with this, because you can see it even with like Boyd's simulation. You can just click a button and then they just scatter. And I think that'll probably be some of the first things that we implement here soon right now, because you'll even notice right now, if you start shooting at the AI, they'll just keep charging right at you. They'll just be like, I'm getting shot at. Might as well just keep walking in the same direction.
But they might crouch if you shoot a lot.
Right. They might crouch. But I think what would be really cool is here soon, we'll create a system where as soon as they start taking fire, they scatter. And this has actually been kind of like a point of debate for like a lot of the team, because a lot of the team is like, well, that's not true. I think that when AI start taking fire, they should just stop where they are and like crouch. And it's like, that's not necessarily, because like they're suppressed, right? I actually think that's one of the biggest arguments between like the players and the development team is
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, how do people react to suppression? Like when you become suppressed, do you just like huddle in a corner and like curl into a ball and just cry? Well, from what we've seen and what the research has gone into it, again, this is an ongoing thing, but our take on it is no. If you get shot at, you're fucking out of there. You know, like you adrenaline comes in, you are sprinting
Yeah.
out.
But
You
I
know,
think that the talk about different profiles.
but exactly.
Yeah, this is a great place to do it because
Yes.
you can see that there's obviously a lot of people that wanted to be like 100% tactical, professional military, like, you know, crouch prone, don't move, take cover, and there's other people, a whole bunch of them, that will be like, no, they need to run away, they need to
Right,
be scared, like
right.
that's how people. So, you know, it's
You know what would be interesting? This just occurred to me, and it only occurred to me because I used to play XCOM a lot, and XCOM actually has like meters for like bravery and stuff like that. You know, it'd be interesting if we could we could make these behavior profiles, and then we could probably have it so every single AI that gets generated that is a part of a behavior profile, we could probably even make it so it's like, hey, every AI with this profile is going to have a random amount of bravery between this value and this value. So we could maybe even have it where it's like, okay, you're going to have trained militia, but even within like the trained militia profile, you're going to randomly have some soldiers that might have like a little bit more bravery or like a little less susception to suppressive fire than others. So I think, yeah, even having that where you have like a squad, and even within that squad, there's going to be like a big difference between, or maybe not a big, as big a difference as the AI designer or the behavior designer creates.
Yeah, we'll see like how they behave, and they will increase it or decrease it,
Yes.
and make it work. But I already plan on doing a very similar thing for their aiming, because one of the things that we obviously have to improve is how AI aim. Right now
Right.
they're not literally aim bots, but they kind of are.
Yeah.
So as that aspect becomes more complex, I was planning to like make like a skill level for
Yeah.
AI, and that skill level will increase or decrease their accuracy, and maybe like their rate of fire and how accurate they are, how far they can see. You know, like basically make them more or less skilled players.
Right.
Just to, you know, to make to have variety between them. Like this bot will be always more skillful than another one.
And you know, it's funny. Again, thinking about mods, one of the ideas I've had for mods, because again, I think people really underestimate like how far I want to push like Operation Harsh Doorstop mods, or even maybe even like in-house game modes. Oh, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Do. Random salesman at my door for some reason. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, you know, it'd be interesting, especially if we implemented a system like that where we have like all of these different values for, you know, their bravery. Imagine if eventually somebody were to create some kind of like long-term campaign or something for OHD. You know, either like an RTS campaign or like or maybe not. Like maybe something like Foxhole and you have AI on there as well. You could eventually even have it so maybe over time as they gain more combat experience, maybe they'll actually change those parameters. Maybe they'll get better, you know, at fighting over time. Like that's all stuff as soon as we implement those values and those values have the ability to be changed, the sky's the limit in terms of creativity on how you can like
that's
use
a really
that.
nice idea. Like
Yeah.
if you perform miserably in one level, they will be like scared and demoralized in the next one.
Yeah.
Like that.
That could be cool. Or like, yeah, over time, maybe one thing is like if they take too much suppressive fire over time, maybe they would become more prone to retreat after like the battlefield stress reaches a certain point, you know, so you could actually like demoralize them over time. I don't know, that could be interesting. But then again, I think another thing,
rabbit hole.
another rabbit hole, so many rabbit holes. I think another thing is also to take into consideration though is we do want them to be good at fighting other players, and the problem with fighting other players is like obviously players don't have morale issues because it's a video game. Like they don't their interest in staying alive isn't nearly as high as, you know, somebody that's in a real combat situation. So I think sometimes designing the AI as if the AI are you know, fearful of death might make them less effective at fighting players. So, you know, something we'll have to take into consideration. All of this, so many variables, so many.
Yeah, but generally we do try to make all those things adjustable.
Right.
Eventually it will be open to people so that you can adjust it per map or however we choose to do it. I mean, that is one of the things we hope to achieve.
Yeah. So let's see. What I want to talk more about the I want to talk more about, I don't know if I want to talk more about like the formations or if I want to talk more about the morale stuff. I think the morale stuff is kind of some of the more interesting stuff in the game. You already, I can't remember if this is the case or not. Did you already implement a system for morale? I can't remember if you did.
I don't think so.
There's
no.
like a simple system though, like where if they take so much suppressive fire or something, it's like gauged based off of that. Is it?
Yeah, but they're just will crouch or
Right.
prone. Like, I don't know if this is an AI.
Tell me a little bit more about how that works. Tell me, because I remember we did work on that, but I can't remember, because a lot of the times we just kind of discuss it, or I'll work with some of the other guys on it, and then I just kind of leave it up to you, and you end up implementing it. And I don't remember exactly what you did. So how does it currently work? So the suppressant, so the AI, they get shot at. There's a meter that fills up, an invisible meter somewhere, and then if that meter gets too high, they'll seek cover, or well, maybe not seek cover. They'll adjust their stance, which right now is the equivalent of seeking cover.
Yeah, well, we will expand it so they will seek cover. But right now they basically have a meter for suppression fire and getting hit, and those meters, like each shot will increase the meter, but they will gradually, just decrease over time. So, and when they're being under suppression for enough, when the meter rises above the threshold, then they can crouch, and if it's even more suppression, they will go prone. It's a similar thing for getting shot, but the thresholds and the values are different. So, like, if their health is below 70, then they will crouch, and if it's below 10 or 15 or something like that, it's a low number, then they will go prone. But it's not based on their health. It's based on that threat level. So when their health goes like to 15, they will go prone. But after like 15 seconds or whatever, they will go crouch, and then after that stand up and continue moving normally.
Talk to me a little bit more about because this is something that gets brought up a lot. And I've talked about it with Donkey, I've talked about it with you. And I think it's also something that I've been intentionally avoiding, because like we said in the beginning, we want to simulate the simplest thing that creates the effect of this without actually having to like manually hard code them. Like you want to organically get them to exhibit certain behaviors more than you want to like manually code them doing a certain behavior. Like you want it to be more natural, you want it to be more procedural. One of the things that I think we've discussed a lot on like how we would do this and should we do this is seeking cover. So obviously I think, when people think about seeking cover, this is also kind of like a big discussion point internally. It's like what is seeking cover? In some cases, do we even really is is them seeking cover what makes the most sense, or is them just running the hell away and hitting the ground, what makes the most sense? Because, having them sprint in a random direction or scatter and then go prone, that's a lot easier to simulate than like, hey, is that trash can good cover? And then like, hey, where am I getting shot at? Okay, now I have to place myself. I have to place this trash can in between me and the person that's shooting at me. Like, that's a very highly detailed feature to implement, and I think we've been specifically avoiding that because it is so granular. But
finicky.
now I think we actually are getting close. I don't want to say we're there yet, but I think we are getting close to a point where we can start incorporating the AI's understanding of hard cover into their strategy, because once we get to a point, because now they already adjust their stance, depending on whether they're taking fire, and I think here soon, especially when we start having them grouping in squads, they're probably we're gonna have it so they're gonna adjust their dispersion when they start taking fire. So instead of just still running straight at the enemy, they're going to scatter. They don't necessarily need to know where cover is to do that. It's just like, hey, avoid obstacles and then just spread yourself out and then hit the dirt. That's something we can do. But once those things are done, I think the only remaining thing, we'll have to think about it more, but I'm pretty sure the only remaining thing that we would have left to do that would allow them to increase their survivability is, seeking cover and making that decision. It's like, okay, when should I seek cover? If I do seek cover, where should I position myself? Like, let's say they're taking crossfire, are they going to put themselves on the wrong side of the wall, and then get shot by the LMG that's on the left side when they're getting shot on the right side,
Well,
Do you...
it's a complex thing, yeah.
I remember talking to Donkey about it as well, because I was like, man, that's going to be a nightmare. And I think I talked with you about it as well, and both of you have kind of said, no, that's actually not going to be as much of a nightmare as I'm going to think it is. I can't.
No.
I could be misremembering it. Maybe you didn't say that.
I understand you completely, because before I looked into these things, I also thought that it's going to be super complicated. But
right.
Actually, Unreal has some pretty nice tools that
okay, let's talk about that, because I remember we've had this conversation already multiple times, and you tell me that, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. We're gonna have that conversation at some point, because every time you say that, you're like, yeah, no, I looked into it. I think we can do this, and I'm like, oh shit, really? I guess so. Let's have that conversation. What are the things that you've found with Unreal Engine where you think we might be able to implement that?
Well, the thing that it's
more easily.
Use this is EQS, like Environment Query System.
Okay.
I think that's how it's called. And essentially, I first saw it used on the new Doom game, like Doom 2016, when they shown a GIF, like, I don't know, some marketing campaign.
Yeah.
There was a GIF where they shown like a level.
Hold on. Is Doom an Unreal Engine? Unreal Engine 4? Yeah, I don't think so. Okay.
Engine is what they use, like.
Right. It's just the concept, though, right? This is like.
But the concept is the same. Like, the whole level is basically filled with like spots with spheres, and each one of them is like colored from green to red. How viable it is, how good of a cover or whatever it is, and like it looked very interesting. And then I found out that like Unreal Engine has a system for that, and you basically. It's very intuitive, actually. You will say like, find me all the spots in the radius of X units, and make sure that every spot is visible from this place, but not visible from that place, and that it's not overlapping with anything. And Unreal will just filter all that and give you the result. The only thing that I'm not sure about is how performant it's gonna be.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like, because if you've got like 50 AI all running a query simultaneously.
Yeah, and like I know that I think that Splinter Cell. What was the name of that? Black something. I don't know. Blacklist.
What is it? Splinter? Oh, Splinter Cell Blacklist. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't play the new Splinter Cell games, but I researched their AI a lot, and like they have very complex AI, and I think they have a limit of like 10 active AI at a time, no more.
Interesting.
Like, we cannot afford that. We
Right.
cannot have AI as a limit. Like,
Yeah.
for us, 100 is kind of like a norm. Like,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, not to say that you could always. I mean, because look at Arma. Arma's like, you could spawn in as many units as you want in the sandbox. Eventually, we'll have a sandbox and an editor, and like, if you want to make your computer run at 1 FPS, we're not going to stop you from being able to do that. But yeah, we do want to like target at least like a minimum amount on like normal hardware to do.
Yeah. But there's a lot of custom solutions, and I didn't research them a lot because there's gonna be time for that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of solutions that seem much more performant and have the same kind of capabilities.
So what would we do? So I think another question is, and this is something that we always have to balance, and I think this is one of the things that we were really proud of for the dynamic pathfinding. But there's a big, we're always taking into consideration like how much should the bots be self-sufficient versus how much should the bots rely on like level designers to actually, and I think even with your entity system or like with your cover your what was it, entity query system, or what was it? Environment query system. I think probably. When you looked into that, do you think that the level designers placed those, or do you think that were they just like assigned to static objects and then?
No, it's all programmable. Like it uses no information specifically made for it. It only relies on geometry.
Oh, really? So it just scans the environment and then just. Oh, wow.
It's a lot of ray tracing and overlaps and collision and stuff.
So
that's what makes kind of a performant hog. But
yeah, I was gonna say, that does sound very. So it basically kind of like does like a LiDAR blast, and then it just kind of like scans its environment. Whew!
Yeah, like a LiDAR. But
that's some Tesla level shit, man.
I mean, Donkey is the man to talk about this.
See, that's where we do get into kind of like it's almost like a self-driving car at that point. Like when they're running ray traces to scan the environment and like mapping it out. Woo! That's intense.
What I think to use is to basically save those places. So like the first time some AI will analyze a specific area, they will do it from scratch, but they will save those locations so that next AI don't have to do it again. They will say, "Oh, this is the hiding spot. Is this safe now?" We can reduce the load.
Or we could potentially, because I think the way the way it works now is the pathfinding is calculated, kind of like at the beginning of the match or something like. Actually, I don't know if it's real time or not. Yeah, it is real time. Yeah, but it's like we could maybe. Yeah, no, I guess, but when we implement the construction, maybe we would have to always run the EQS in real time.
Yeah, but it's good that. We can also say that if there is any kind of construction work in that area, then you say, okay, these EQS values are not valid anymore because it's a new building and you have to do it again. Right. So it's dynamic, but it still saves on performance. So. Right. And there's a lot of things to do and
rabbit holes.
Now we have more options and more,
space. That is a big thing that I want to remind everybody of. One of the biggest reasons that we even have the ability to make a game like this with such a low budget is we are very much standing on the shoulders of giants. Like Unreal Engine, and not just Unreal Engine, but the constant work that Epic Games is constantly still putting into Unreal Engine, and also all of the features that people, even the community, are constantly researching. Like every day that I talk to the rest of the team, like we're all looking at blogs, articles, everything else that everybody's figuring out. That is a massive impact on our ability to do this cheaply, because a lot of these other studios, especially when they're building engines and stuff like that completely from scratch, that's one of the reasons some of those projects, like their budgets are just astronomical, because like Frostbite engine from Battlefield, a lot of this stuff they have to make entirely in-house. Like they don't even And with us,
Yeah.
luckily, we get to utilize all of the things from the Unreal community, all of the things from the Epic community. And don't get me wrong, we're still developing a crap ton of proprietary internal stuff, because you still have to this day. Not everything has been built. And in some cases, not everything should be built. Like, you do have to, even Unreal Engine, like, if Unreal Engine was already a tactical shooter out of the box, it might make it actually harder for somebody who's making like a role-playing game to do their role.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
in some cases, there is some stuff that we just have to do ourselves, which is fine. That's totally fine. But I think that is going to be a big aspect of, so when we do these videos, every single month, every single week sometimes, there's going to be new stuff that's coming out, and we're going to say, oh, hey, this new thing just came out. Now we can do this, like now we can do this new thing that we've wanted to do. Even vehicles, I think, is a big aspect of that. Like, a big question that we've had is like, how much should we develop our own proprietary technology for handling vehicles in Unreal versus how much should we just wait for Epic to eventually just release their damn buggy from Fortnite,
Yeah.
so we can just copy paste that, because like, they're gonna do it because they've done stuff like that before.
Yeah, but and it's been more than once that we develop something, and then it turns out like a month or a few months after that, like,
Yeah.
hey, look
It-
at our new feature
I
for the
know,
engine.
exactly. And we're like, shit, why did we spend all that time making that thing? Yeah.
Better if we did nothing.
I know. And I think a lot of that, because again, those decisions rely on me and like the upper management team, because sometimes, because there is stuff, you just gotta accept that loss sometimes, because sometimes it's impossible to know. Like, we'll do
exactly.
proprietary work, and then next week some other studio or even Epic will come out and be like, hey, that thing you guys have been working on? Well, we just did it, and we're giving it for free. And we're like, well, thanks, but shit. So there's part of that that's just going to be inevitable. But I also think that's also the big part. Like, that's the big chess game of like managing the development of this project. Is you try to do your best to predict long term what we need to be focusing on that isn't either going to be replaced or redundant or obsolete or something like that. So it's a big what's the word? I can't remember to think about, like, I guess, like balancing a bunch of plates, a big balancing act, basically.
Yeah, but I think it's also a gamble, because you cannot know what's gonna happen. So you just a luck is a big part of it as well. I mean, sometimes you do everything right and things
right, exactly. Sometimes it's just you got to eat those losses. So I think so with the cover based stuff, I still think it'll probably be a little while before we actually implement them seeking cover.
Have like squad behavior and improve their vision,
because
and a lot of small tweaks.
It'll be funny. I wouldn't be surprised if when we implement some of the things that we're working on right now, I wouldn't be surprised if people think that we will have implemented the ability for AI to like find cover, because it'll almost be like the AI are doing that. But and people won't really know, they won't be able to tell exactly what the AI are doing. But like, if we get to a point where the AI are moving in squads, but then as soon as they take fire, like they break formation and scatter and hit the dirt, that might actually be effective. Like, that might be, it might even, I don't want to say that that's going to be all that we need to do, but like, if we implement that and then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, we could implement the AI's ability to actually like use EQS or whatever, in order to like find, like, but it's only going to give them like an additional 1% survivability, versus them just scattering, and hitting the dirt and using like the Boyd system. We may end up, deprioritizing that, where it's like, okay, we could implement their ability to scan the environment and use that whole system to seek cover, but like, there's other stuff that we could implement that would be much simpler and would kind of achieve the exact same effect.
Definitely.
So that's a big thing that we'll have to see after we implement some of the next stuff that we're going to implement. I am really excited about that. I think here soon with the squad management stuff and everything, I think that's going to be really cool. I am personally really looking forward to getting to the point where the AI can construct their own bases. Because as I understand it, I actually think that might end up being something that people think is really complex, but I feel really confident after looking into it and working with everybody on the team, analyzing that feature for AI. I actually think that'll be something that would be pretty relatively easy to implement. But it's going to be such a powerful feature. It's going to be something where it's like, yo, the AI can build their own bases. Like, that's huge.
I mean,
and
there is a big challenge of like how will they know where is a good place to build it, but I'm pretty sure we'll go down another rabbit hole and figure out some weird way to do it.
My existing design for this that I haven't really, because again it's a feature that's so far off. Like, we've had, I think, a couple of internal meetings where we brought this up, and I drafted up a couple of design documents. But basically, the minimum feature for this to be functional, I think what we would do, because even in Squad, with Squad, the way the fobs work in Squad, it doesn't matter as much where you build them. Not to say that it doesn't matter where you build them, because there's absolutely some ways where you can build fobs to be highly exploitable. But usually what happens in Squad is you'll just have a bunch of fobs that are built a certain distance away from the flag, and you just need to build fobs to encircle that flag. And when you even look at, like, standard military doctrine, I mean, I hate to bring this up, especially since we do have a team member in Ukraine right now, which really sucks, and we're still working. He's in Kherson, and we're still working with him. But when you even look at how Russia is handling, trying to achieve their objectives, like, that's what they do. They go in there, they encircle an objective, they set up forward outposts. And I think with us right now, I don't even think we would necessarily need to create that much of an advanced system for the AI in terms of, like, where they build a fob. It's like, just build a fob anywhere within this radius of this objective. Like, if, move 100 meters away from this flag and just build somewhere. Find a spot. Yeah. And go ahead.
You said about the Russian technique of, like, encircling a city. I think I watched, like, a video about military strategy some time ago where that was one of the most used strategies in the history. Like, some people will attack a city, but others will just, encircle
it's just siege. It's just siege.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just the siege.
Yeah.
So that's quite simple to.
So for us, even if you were to look, I mean, you can't see what I'm looking at, delay, but I guess you could if you went to the stream. But
the stream,
well, actually, what I can do? I can double up. Check this out. I can stream in Discord and I can stream on the stream. Look at me. But
it's not problem.
Even if we were to create a system where it's like, for instance, you got this map here, we could probably make it where we just draw a circle, like an invisible circle around the objective, and we can just say, hey, AI, pick a random spot on this circle. We could probably use the capture radius of the actual flag as well. So it's like, hey, if the capture radius is this big, build it like 100 meters outside, maybe. Or we could have a variety. It's like, hey, maybe attempt to build a fob within the radius, but then if that doesn't work, build a fob outside the radius or whatever. Or maybe, build one outside the radius first and then slowly move in. And then what I was actually planning on doing, I feel like what we'll probably do is we would do this at first, but then we would maybe make a system where the AI would actually, like, procedurally build a fob. But I was planning on just having a system where I would just manually create prefabricated fob layouts. So it's just like, hey, go here, place down a hab, or place down a radio or whatever here, and then once the radio is done, we can have a preset blueprint of, like, structures that they just build around that, and then if there's, like, a tree or a building or something in the way, then just don't build that specific thing, right? Because if you've got, like, a line of if you got a radio here and then the blueprint of the fob is like, okay, now build sandbags, in a square, but there's a big house right here, and it's like, okay, well, but if there's a house in the way, then just skip those sandbags. And then I think, if you had a basic system like that, I feel like you could have the AI build pretty convincing fobs. Even if they were to go into an urban area and build it, and then you've got like sandbags kind of like in between each household. Like if you were to just put a circle of sandbags here, but you only had it so the sandbags were like in the places where the terrain was like open, I think that would still be a pretty convincing fob, and it would be pretty relatively easy to give the AI the ability to do that, and it would be pretty performant as well, because you wouldn't have to have any like super complicated logic or decision making or like queries or anything like that. It's just like move to X distance from this spot and then just plop down a pre-built. I mean, when you think about it, real-time strategy games, you look at Company of Heroes, they've got no problem building stuff. All these RTS games, you've got all these AI that have no problem building stuff in the, why should first-person shooters be any different? And it's kind of strange to me that there hasn't been a first-person shooter with advanced AI that have the ability to like construct their own defensive positions, because there's a lot of RTS games that have that, but not very many FPS games, or any that I can think of actually.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure because I haven't worked on RTS games to have like direct knowledge, but there might be like a technical limit that just prevents it. But
Right,
and
true.
I'm pretty sure that we're gonna find it. But I agree with you. Like this is something that I too would like to do, and to so far it seems very, very plausible.
It does. But then we just have to actually get into it, and then because sometimes it is easy, and you're like, oh wow, that was easy, and then sometimes you're like, oh shit, that's why this isn't easy. Like halfway in, you're like,
why nobody does it?
damn it. Okay, I understand now. I mean, yeah, we've definitely run into a bunch of those. Although even when those things happen, sometimes you'll find out that it's harder, but it's still totally achievable. It's just like, okay, well, that takes more effort. But then, hopefully we can just market ourselves more and get, more funding to hopefully hire a couple of additional people to, complete whatever big feature that we have to get over is. So yeah. All right, well, you know what? I think I'm probably going to wrap up about here because it's 3:20. We've got a meeting in 40 minutes. Where we're going to go over basically a bunch of this shit all over again anyways. So yeah, so Delay, thanks so much for coming on the stream. I think this is cool. You had a fun time, right? This wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Right, this is cool. Yeah, let's do this. We should do this more. I think cuz for the longest time we've basically been like working in the basement of the internet, and we haven't, we haven't had, and now we're finally at a point where I think the game is really strong and it's playable, and not to say that it's complete by any means, but I'm really proud of what we've made so far. Like, I mean, are you? I feel like that's a rhetorical question. Like, no, I think it's shit, dude. Yeah.
I think I've looked I looked at the videos I made for the original AI prototype I did like 2 years ago, and I looked at the models. And
it's crazy, right? It's like,
is this still the same?
I know. It's like, did we make this? Like, it's like, it's crazy, because you look at the first stuff and it's like, huh, that is rough. And then you look at it now and it's like, man, who made this game? It wasn't us, right? Like, no way. That's cool.
When did this happen?
I know. And I think, there is something to be said about that as well, because I think even us, that kind of makes it all the more important when we talk about like simple features having a much bigger impact than I think people realize. Because again, like, it gets to this point where I remember how much work it took. What do you think took more work? Do you think it took more work to implement the AI to the point where they like had to conga line to the point, or do you think it took more work to implement like the Boyd system where they maintain dispersion?
Well, I think the Boyds took more time.
Oh, really? Than the dynamic pathfinding, or well, I guess Jordan worked on the dynamic pathfinding.
Yeah, I think the Donkey, and I guess it will take me even more time than
Right,
Donkey.
Fair.
And it like, I don't know, like a month or something maybe. I don't know.
But yeah, it took a long time. The dynamic pathfinding, it took a lot of time, and it took like multiple members. And I just remember, you know, after we got done with all of this work and we got the dynamic pathfinding done, and it's like, okay, let's see the result, and then they're all like conga lining to one another, which for me, like, I'm looking at that and I can see the potential, but it is still funny because it's like, well, there's no way in hell I can show this to anybody because nobody's gonna get like why this is cool because it's just a bunch of AI conga lining, but oh my god, that took so much work. But then, you know, we do the Boyd stuff. And, you know, the Boyd stuff, not to say that the Boyd stuff is easy, but, you know, compared to the amount of work that it took to get us to that point. But it's like you implement the Boyd stuff and it's like, dude, like, I didn't expect this to feel so good after such a small, like, after such a simple change. And I think, yeah, the more that we implement stuff like that, little features like that, it gets to a point where it starts having almost like a bigger return on investment, right? Where it's like, you know, we spent... Yeah, like we spend like a year working on a simple feature, and then you still can't really show it off. But then, you know, after that's done, we spend like 2 weeks working on a feature, and then it's like, wow, like that's like a 500% increase in like coolness factor, you know, from just a simple tweak. Like that's awesome. And I think we are now in like a really cool phase where that starts happening. Like, you know, I still remember when Barney came on and he did all the procedural, like, recoil stuff and everything, and that was such a huge, such a huge, like, impact on, like, the look and feel of the game. But then when you compare it to the amount of work that it took us to just get the basic ballistic system in, it's just like, you know, nothing. But then, you know, it's very hard for people to appreciate the basic ballistic stuff when it's just like, oh, this just looks like a default shooter. You know, and it's like, I know, but it's like, it took a lot of work, you know. But then, you know, you implement, like, the procedural animation stuff, and now everybody's like, oh, my God, this looks like Call of Duty. And it's like, wow, you know, I'm happy you appreciate this, but it's like, there's other things we've done that took a lot longer like, and was way less cool looking, but needed to be done. So, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that there's a lot of people like who follow OHD that actually do appreciate
They do, yeah. And again... I think that's why it's really exciting to be where we're at now, because, you know, the game is definitely not done. We've got a long ways to go, but it's finally at that point where we can kind of start working on the fun stuff where when we implement it, it just has, like, that immediate impact of that coolness factor, right? Like, again, I think when we implement, like, the squad system, I'm going to be able to make a video on that. I think that's going to blow people's minds. You know, and like when we start implementing some of the other stuff, I would actually say the only thing that I'm genuinely still concerned about that we're gonna have to like still like discuss how we're gonna do it is, and I really can't wrap my head around this, is and I need to do some more research on other projects, is handling when the AI should utilize other equipment. That's the only thing that is like really kind of like a paradox for me. It's like, when should they take out that RPG? Because like obviously, you know, only take it out when there's a vehicle, but it's like you definitely engage infantry with it sometimes. But it's like, when would you engage infantry with it? Like when the infantry are all clustered up, it's like, I mean, I guess, but you know,
kind of like with the cover system and that whole thing, like when you first think about it, there's so many variables, like it's impossible to do it, and then but
then you find something, and then that's like, oh, there is a solution, but then
it's kind of nice.
right, I think there's a lot of I think when we implement that, there's going to be a lot of balancing as well, because that's another factor, because it's like, okay, well, they use grenades too much, you know, or they use grenades too little, and it's like we got to figure out, you know, how often, and eventually we'll have to, you know, implement like systems for difficulty, so you can like, because you're always going to have people that are like, the AI are too good, but it's just because they're really bad at the game, you know, so like, you know, or you have the people that are like, the AI are too bad, but it's just because like, you know, but we just had somebody complain that they're too good, and it's like, you know, so eventually I think we'll have to create, you know, a system so people can now choose the difficulty.
I have an interesting idea. We don't have to talk about it now because
go ahead.
We're taking too much time. Well, about that.
No, it's fine. They're half an hour technically before the meeting, but
well,
go ahead. No, we're getting into it. Go ahead. See, I love it.
Like, I'm not sure if this is gonna work, but I had the idea to for AI to basically adjust that skill level that I was talking about, so they can adjust their skill level when fighting specific player characters. For
That
example,
would be interesting. You know, I was actually in the back of my mind thinking like,
it doesn't seem to be that complicated. Like if like the two of us play the game and you're really good at it,
that
but
would
I'm
be
really bad.
so funny.
And the AI will just be inaccurate when they shoot at me because I suck, but they will be bots when they shoot at you. And
That would be so funny. You know,
like,
I wonder if
they
people
come
would get
back-
mad if we implemented that though. Like,
well, we surely have to say that to people. Like, hey,
yeah.
is the game mode? Yeah, like they adjust their behavior.
I think what would make sense is to do that for cooperative modes, but like in PvP modes, I feel like you could exploit it. It's like, send the shitty squad first because then the AI won't be able to hit them, and then we can pop them. That would be interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. But you see, again, we're at the fun part now, right? Like all of these ideas, and we get to think about all this crazy stuff. Yeah, that would be cool. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up. Delays has been great. We should do more of these, and then obviously we'll have more developers on as everybody continues working on the game and as we continue marketing. Thanks so much. I'm gonna go ahead. I know there's been a bunch of people that have like backed on Patreon, and I'm gonna put down one more key. Wow, there's been a lot of people. Joe, Jamil, Philip, Man in Black, Lucas. Hold on, I have to go to the Patreon because there's so many. I have to open this up here. Lucas, Sebastian, Talon, What Grenade Where, Nutty Nut, Yasin, Thomas, The Bento Box, Haroon, Guckman, Tymic, Digo Wego, Coleman, David? I don't know, D-A-W-I-D, so like David with a W. Ludwig, Jackson, Cole, and Jakey. Thanks so much for supporting the project on Patreon during the live stream. Much appreciated. And yeah, hopefully, if you guys want, feel free to listen back over this because there's a lot. I think this is cool because like there's so much meat when we do these live streams. There's so much meat in this now. So like there's so many questions that people can probably now answer. And then obviously the development blogs will continue releasing and going into all of this, and we're going to be continuing working on this game. I think like we could do another live stream talking about the exact same thing next week after learning a whole bunch of new stuff, and it would probably be a completely different conversation because every single week it's like there's new things that are changing and stuff that's like, so yeah. All right, cool. Wrap it up. Delay, anything else you want to say?
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Sick. That's a lie. I know it. Nobody likes talking to me, Delay. Don't be disingenuous. Likewise, man. It's always great. It's so much fun. It's constantly. I think that's one of the reasons we love doing this is because it just constantly feels like, I don't know what the right word is, but like we just get to nerd out. You know, like you get to nerd out on this every single day, and we get to, talk about cool stuff and then see it, after we talk about the cool stuff and we figure out how to do it, then we implement it in the game and you get to see it and then everybody gets to play with it. It's a dope feeling. It definitely is. So hopefully as long as we continue to grow and the project keeps getting more traction, there's going to be, we just get to keep doing this more, and then we get to hopefully bring on additional people to help us even further. We still need, man, oh my gosh, at some point, if there's anybody out there, we need more help with UI. We have a couple of people who are on board that already help with UI, but that's going to be a big thing, is UI designers here soon. I need to see more, because eventually, it's fun. You worked on the UI for a bit, didn't you? You did the whole prototype for the, what else?
I think key bindings and
yeah, you did a bunch of stuff other than the AI when you first came on board. You implemented, didn't you implement the entire prototype construction system? Or no, not the entire. Wasti did the prototype, and you created.
I did like a basic system, and then Wasti came and he did like an advanced version of that.
Right.
Like full blown.
You did the Comoros stuff though, right?
The what? Sorry.
The Comoros? Oh my God, we did the same thing because nobody else calls it Comoros. The circle menu.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a bunch of stuff like that. So eventually, once Delay gets to a point where we can actually start having more advanced stuff like giving AI commands and stuff like that. I think having somebody on the team who is just like really enthusiastic about building different like user interface implementations and stuff like that is going to be really valuable, because I mean, there again, once this AI system is fleshed out, I don't even think we've started seeing like the kinds of stuff you'll be able to do with this. Like when you look at Arma, and I think Arma is probably one of the only other tactical shooters that I can think of off the top of my head that has like sandbox AI, because you've got stuff like Ready or Not, you've got stuff like Ground Branch, but you can't really like there's no real sandbox environment for that. And when you look at Arma and you've got like Zeus and all of these different implementations, you know, eventually for us, maybe we could have like a commander mode, and not like a commander mode with like, you know, like Battlefield Commander where you just call in artillery or something like that. Imagine there's a commander mode and you can like, it's like a RTS FPS or something like that. So much potential. Like the AI here, I don't even think we've scratched the surface on what we can do with them. Having somebody that could come on board and help like create user interface drafts for all of those different things, and then hopefully even implement them in UE4, that's going to be a huge deal. So if anybody is interested in that, applications are always open. Make sure you go do that. I'm going to wrap this up because I got to go pick up my son from school really quick. Thanks so much to everybody who supported, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream. All right. Take care. Delay. I'll see you in 20 minutes. Cheers, guys.